Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into Marty Cagan's Transformed, moving to the product operating model.
And we're using the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu to help us unpack all this great stuff.
Exactly. We're going to try to break down the core ideas, how companies can really adapt and thrive, really transform themselves.
In today's crazy business world,
Yeah, it's changing all the time.
it's nonstop.
So this book isn't just about building a better product. It's about, transforming the whole organization, right?
Right. Think about companies that have really nailed this. CarMax, Gympass, Adobe, that kind of thing.
Wow. Yeah, those are some big names.
They've all successfully implemented this model. And that's what we're going to be looking at.
Awesome. Okay, so the heart of this transformation is what Kagan calls the product operating model. Can you give us a quick breakdown of what that actually means before we go any further?
Sure. It's basically a fundamental shift, in the way we think about things, moving away from these rigid, process-driven structures.
I've seen that
Oh, yeah.
so many companies get bogged down in the process.
It happens all the time, but this model, it's all about being more flexible and outcome-driven. Always put the customer first.
So instead of just churning out features, companies are really zeroing in on solving actual user problems.
Exactly.
I feel like as a consumer, I see that all the time, companies pushing out all these features, but I don't even need them.
Yeah, they're just doing it for the sake of it. This model flips the script. Instead of what can we build,
Right.
it's what problem are we solving for the user?
I like that.
And what outcomes do we want? Kagan uses a great example, Nova Health.
Okay.
They had terrible user engagement. It was really low. And in 6 months
Yeah.
after adopting this model, they saw a 30% increase in engagement.
30% in just 6 months. Okay, now I'm interested.
It works, but transforming a whole company, like changing how everyone thinks,
And works.
yeah, it's massive, right?
Yeah, where do you even start with something like that?
Well, Kagan breaks it down into 4 key concepts. The 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu really helps lay it all out, too.
Okay, 4 foundational concepts, like the pillars holding up this whole transformation.
Exactly. And the first one, arguably the most important, is customer-centricity.
Okay, yeah, I've heard that term before.
Mhm.
We're not just talking about, saying your customer focus, right?
No, this is about truly understanding and solving real user problems. And you got to do your research.
Get out there and talk to people.
Exactly. Talk to your users, understand their pain points, and validate your assumptions. Don't just guess.
It's like you can have the most amazing product in the world, but if it doesn't solve a real problem,
It's going nowhere.
it's useless.
Right. The second concept is empowered product teams.
Okay.
Instead of having these siloed departments, you've got cross-functional teams,
Like product people, designers, the engineers.
all working together with a shared understanding of the customer. And they have the freedom to make decisions, to iterate quickly.
That's interesting that you bring up silos, because so often it seems like these departments are operating completely independently,
Oh.
almost competing with each other when they should be working together.
And that just kills innovation.
Yeah, this kind of collaboration could unleash so much creativity.
Absolutely. And this leads right into the third concept, which is an outcome-driven approach.
Right, what's that all about?
It's not just about churning out features for no reason, You have to define what success means.
Set your goals first.
Yes. What are you trying to achieve? Increased engagement, higher conversion rates, happier customers, whatever it is.
It's like you need to have a destination before you start your road trip, right?
Exactly. And finally, the fourth concept is continuous learning and iteration.
Okay, got to keep getting better all the time.
It's not about getting everything perfect on the first try. You're always experimenting, always getting feedback, always refining.
Yeah, like that saying, fail fast and fail often,
Mm-hmm.
but actually learn from it.
That's it. So we've got the 4 pillars of the product operating model: customer centricity, empowered product teams, outcome-driven approach, and continuous learning and iteration.
These all sound great in theory, but they can't just exist on their own.
You're right. You need the right structure, the right culture.
The right mindset.
Yep, to make them work.
And that's where the real transformation begins.
It's not just about adopting new processes. It's a whole new way of operating. Kagan highlights some real-world companies who did this, and they're in the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu, too.
Okay, give me an example.
One great one is TechNow. They were losing market share because they were stuck in the old ways of doing things.
Oh, I hate when that happens.
But they applied these concepts and saw incredible results.
Okay, I want to hear all about tech now.
But first, we need to talk about the mindset shift that needs to happen on an organizational level. We're talking about moving from output-focused to outcome-focused.
Okay, yeah, I'm seeing how this is about way more than just, like, tweaking a few things.
It really is.
This is a whole new way of thinking about how companies work,
You got it.
how they create value, how they treat their customers.
It's a whole new perspective.
I'm ready to dive in.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we've said that this product operating model, it's about a lot more than just changing a few processes. It's really about a fundamental shift.
Yeah, fundamental shift in how a company works, like how they actually operate.
What are some of those changes, the key changes that companies need to make this work?
One of the biggest is shifting from an output-focused way of thinking to one that is outcome-focused.
Okay.
Instead of measuring success just by like how many features you ship or projects you complete,
Right.
you're looking at the impact of those features.
The actual results.
Exactly, the impact they have on your users and on your business.
So it's not just checking things off a list. It's about, are we achieving something meaningful?
Exactly. And this shift, it changes everything.
Oh, wow.
How you set your goals, how you measure your progress, how you incentivize your teams, it all has to change.
I'm starting to see how this runs really deep. Like, it's not just changing what you do, it's changing how you think about what you're doing.
That's exactly it. Another big shift is moving away from these siloed departments.
Yeah, we talked about that a bit earlier,
Working in isolation.
towards more cross-functional collaboration.
Yes. The product operating model, it really breaks down those walls between teams,
Product design, engineering, marketing, everyone working together.
all working together towards shared goals. Makes sense, right?
It does. When everyone's working on their own little thing,
Mm.
it's easy to lose sight of the big picture.
Totally.
And you end up with products and features that don't really work together.
Exactly. But when you have these cross-functional teams and they're empowered,
Empowered.
yeah, give them the freedom to make decisions, solve problems on their own, let them experiment, iterate quickly and take ownership.
And that requires a lot of trust from leadership, right? To just let go,
It does. But when you trust your teams and you give them the freedom,
to do their thing.
that's when the creativity happens.
Okay.
That's when the innovation really takes off.
Okay, so it's moving away from that command and control style leadership
It is.
towards something more collaborative, supportive.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So we talked about shifting from outputs to outcomes, breaking down silos, empowering teams. What do you think the last piece of this organizational puzzle is?
Oh, well, it seems like we've touched on this already. It's about truly understanding your customer, right?
You got it. It's about moving from relying on assumptions to really getting to know your customer. This might be the most crucial shift of all.
Okay, but how do you actually do that? Get that deep understanding? Is it just more customer surveys?
It's much more than just surveys. It's about making that customer the center of everything.
Wow.
Customer centricity in every part of your development process.
Okay, so you're talking about,
Talking to your users constantly, watching them use your product, looking at the data, all of it.
you really are trying to understand their needs, their pain points, everything.
Exactly. It's like this constant feedback loop, listening to them, learning from their experiences, and using that to inform all your decisions.
I'm seeing how these pieces fit together. So outcome focus, cross-functional collaboration, empowered teams, and really understanding your customer.
Those are the four big shifts. And when you put them together,
Yeah.
you create a foundation for this product operating model to flourish.
It's really about creating a culture of agility and innovation, and of course, keeping that focus on the customer.
You got it.
But I imagine it's not always easy to make these kinds of changes,
It's not.
especially for those big companies resistant to change.
It can be tough. There will be challenges, setbacks, for sure. And Kagan knows this.
Yeah.
He dedicates a lot of space in the book to talking about actual techniques for making this happen.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
And the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu, it boils these down really well.
That's awesome. Okay, so we've got the what of transformation.
Right.
Now let's get into the how. What are those techniques? How do companies actually implement this successfully?
One technique is all about setting the vision.
The vision.
Yeah, define a clear vision for what success looks like with this new model.
Where do we want to be?
Exactly. What kind of impact are we trying to make on our customers? What does it actually look like?
So you paint this picture of the future.
Exactly. And it can't just be words on a page,
Right.
You got to communicate it. Leadership needs to buy in.
They have to believe in it.
Yeah.
Because if the people at the top aren't on board, no one else is going to care.
That's so true. And that brings us to the next technique.
Okay?
It's all about leadership alignment. Leaders can't just give this lip service.
They have to walk the walk.
They got to be active champions of this model, support their teams, adapt their own leadership styles if they need to.
Lead by example.
Exactly. And then there's change management.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
We all know change is hard.
People don't like it.
They resist it, especially in big organizations where everything's been done the same way forever.
So how do you get people on board and through all those bumps in the road?
That's where good change management comes in. You got to communicate clearly.
Keep people in the loop.
Frequently. Address people's concerns, provide training, support, celebrate those early wins to keep the momentum going.
So you're making people feel like they're actually part of this?
Exactly, part of the process. And then there's the actual implementation, you know. You don't have to transform the whole company all at once.
Start smaller.
Yes. Kagan recommends an incremental approach. Maybe start with a pilot program.
In one team.
Right, one team or department. Test it out, see what works, get feedback, iterate, and then roll it out to the rest of the company.
So it's like dipping your toes in the water before you do a cannonball.
I like that. That's a good way to put it. So we've got the vision, leadership's on board, we're managing the change, and implementing slowly.
What's the final piece?
The last piece of the puzzle is continuous improvement.
Always got to be getting better.
Yes. The product operating model, it's not a one-time thing. You're always evaluating what's working, what needs to be improved.
It's not about reaching the finish line and then just stopping.
No, it's the opposite. It's about constantly learning and adapting. And that continuous improvement is essential to make sure this transformation sticks.
Okay, this is all sounding incredible, really powerful stuff.
It is.
But I always like to see how this works in the real world.
Me too.
Can you give me an example of a company that successfully used all these techniques to actually transform themselves?
Absolutely. Let's talk about Innotech.
Okay.
They were this big tech company that had become, well, kind of bureaucratic and slow. They knew they had to change,
To keep up.
but they weren't sure how.
So those classic big company problems.
Yeah, too much red tape, not enough agility.
But their CEO, he was a real visionary.
He was, and he knew they needed a fundamental shift. He brought in some experienced product leaders.
To help implement this new model.
Exactly. So how did they actually apply these techniques and turn things around? Well, first, they had to define their vision.
Okay, create a compelling vision for this transformation.
Yes. And it wasn't just about being more innovative.
Had to be concrete.
They wanted to increase customer satisfaction, shorter development cycles, empower their teams.
So they knew exactly where they wanted to be, not just a general direction.
That's right. And then they got leadership on board.
Crucial.
They had workshops, one-on-one meetings, presentations, the whole 9 yards.
Wow.
They made sure that every leader understood the vision, why it was important, and what their role was going to be.
Because without that, it just wouldn't work.
It wouldn't. And they also had to think about the rest of the company.
Everyone had to be brought along.
Yes. They implemented this amazing change management plan, clear communication, training programs. They even had a dedicated support team to help people through it.
So they made sure people's concerns were being heard and that they had the resources to handle this.
Exactly. And they didn't try to do it all at once.
Right.
They took that incremental approach. They started with a pilot program in one of their product divisions, you know, using cross-functional teams, focusing on outcomes.
Okay, so they started small with a test run.
That's it. And they were successful.
Of course.
So they took those learnings and expanded it out to other areas of the company. It was this gradual rollout,
Showing everyone it could be done.
building momentum all along the way. And finally, they really embraced that continuous improvement mindset.
They never stopped.
They had regular retrospectives, invested in training. They were constantly learning, constantly adapting.
Okay, so they weren't just checking boxes. They were truly committed to this.
They were, and the results speak for themselves. Within a year, their customer satisfaction was way up, development was faster, their teams were happier and more productive.
Another win for the product operating model. You know, this has been really fascinating, but I gotta admit, I'm a bit of a sucker for stories.
Me too. Stories are great.
And I know Kagan talks about the importance of storytelling in this whole transformation process, but I don't know, it seems a little, fluffy.
I get it, but stories are super important here. And the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathoo really brings this point home.
Okay, how so?
Stories help us relate to these complex concepts. They make us want to take action, and they give us a guide for how to handle challenges.
Okay, I'm willing to be convinced. Give me an example.
Let's talk about Fast Track Solutions. They were a SaaS company, growing really fast, but they were hitting those classic growing pains.
I've heard of them. So they were growing fast, but starting to feel the strain of that growth.
Yeah, longer release cycles, customers weren't as happy, huge backlog of features they wanted to add.
Classic growing pains. It happens to the best of them.
And their chief product officer, she knew they needed to change.
Of course.
But she also wanted to learn from others, people who had already been through this.
Smart. Learn from others' mistakes.
She started reading case studies, going to conferences, talking to people in the industry.
Okay.
And one story really stood out to her.
Okay, lay it on me. I'm all ears.
It was about this company that had successfully used a dual-track agile approach.
Dual-track agile. What's that? I've never heard of that.
Basically, product discovery and product delivery, they're happening at the same time, but in two separate tracks.
Okay.
One track's all about understanding the customer, doing experiments, validating ideas, and the other track's focused on actually building and releasing those features.
So you're always learning and always building, running both sides at the same time.
Exactly. You're constantly moving forward. And this story really highlighted how this approach helped the company stay agile and keep their focus on the customer even as they grew.
I can see why that would appeal to fast-track CPO.
Definitely.
But did they just copy exactly what that other company did?
No, not at all. She brought the story to her team, and they really thought about it.
Okay.
Could this work for us? What changes would we need to make? What challenges might we run into?
So it was like a jumping-off point,
Yeah.
a starting point for their own journey.
That's a great way to put it. And they decided to try it out, ran a pilot program with one of their core products,
Great.
implemented the dual-track agile. This way they could test it out, smaller scale before going all in.
Always good to start small.
So they split their team into two tracks.
One for discovery, one for delivery.
Exactly. And they made sure those two tracks are constantly communicating, collaborating.
So everyone was on the same page, working together.
Exactly. And they made sure those customer insights were being integrated into the development process.
So those two tracks weren't working in isolation. They were in harmony.
That's a great way to describe it. And throughout this whole pilot, the CPO, she kept encouraging everyone to share their experiences, the good and the bad.
Ooh, I like that.
It really created this culture of storytelling within the team, helped them learn faster, adapt more quickly.
So they were taking that initial story that inspired them,
Right.
and they were building their own story on top of it.
It's like their own journey became a source of knowledge and inspiration for others.
Love it. And what happened? What were the results?
They were fantastic. They were able to release things faster. Customer satisfaction went up. And they even got that huge backlog under control.
Another win for stories. It's making me realize that stories aren't just, nice to hear.
No, they're not.
They're powerful. They can help us learn and solve problems, make change happen.
They really can. And it's not just about hearing stories from other companies.
Right.
It's about sharing your own stories, too, inside the company, outside the company. When you share your successes and failures,
What you learn.
you're contributing to this shared pool of knowledge. It benefits everyone.
It's like this beautiful cycle.
It is.
You learn from others, you create your own story, then you share that to help others.
Exactly. And the 1-Hour Guide by Anil Nathu, it does a great job of explaining all of this. Stories can make these big, complicated ideas easier to understand, make you want to take action. They connect us to the people who've already done this, the ones who've paved the way.
This has been such an insightful deep dive into Transformed. What are the big takeaways? What should our listeners be thinking about?
Transformation is possible, but it's a huge shift in mindset. You got to be willing to try new things.
Be open to change.
Embrace the change. Be customer-centric. Empower your teams. Focus on those outcomes and always be learning, always be adapting. And don't forget those stories.
Never underestimate the power of a good story.
They can inspire you, guide you, and connect you to a world of knowledge.
I love that. And if you want a really great summary of all these ideas, I highly recommend checking out the 1-Hour Guide by Anil Nathu.
It's a great resource for anyone who wants to learn more about this product operating model and how to put these ideas into practice.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us today. Visit the 1-Hour Guide website for more business insights by Anil Nathu.